Hello everybody, how's it going? Hope you're all well, and welcome to today's video, which is a giant announcement, big announcement, huge news. I suspect this will be on the news, and that the king will have to be informed. And maybe I'll go downstairs to balloons and cake. Basically, I have decided to follow in the footsteps of the world's best camera reviewer, in my opinion, Mr. Gerald Undone, and I've decided to stop making videos about new cameras because by and large my interest in new cameras has waned. You'll know if you follow this channel that hasn't stopped me making lots of videos about new cameras over the past year or so, particularly since my second son Arthur was born, because life has been challenging, frankly. And making videos about cameras is pretty straightforward. You don't have to think of anything interesting to say. The camera is your subject matter, and you know people will watch it because it's gear. So I've lent heavily on that. But to be honest, I've been forcing interest in something I've been very interested in for a long time, which is cameras. And I'm done dedicating entire videos talking about new cameras after this one. So a couple of years back, I got a bit burned. That's not right. It makes it sound like something bad happened to me. It was completely self-inflicted. I agreed to go to the Faroe Islands to make a video with the Hasselblad X2D in exchange for the Hasselblad X2D. And I agreed to do it knowing that some people don't really like that kind of thing, because ultimately I really wanted Hasselblad. But the problem came a couple of months into the ownership of that camera, where I realised it wasn't suited to me and my photography. That felt like a camera that was much more suited to someone that was more methodical than me. A landscape photographer on a tripod, a studio photographer, someone doing portraiture, something like that. But for me, it felt just a tiny bit slow, and it felt like it got in my way, which was a shame, because I think it's the best looking camera I've ever used. And I didn't really used to care about the looks of cameras, but I really enjoyed using it and interacting with it, apart from the fact that it felt a bit sluggish for the stuff that I do. So yeah, between realising that it wasn't really the camera for me and having a bit of a cash flow problem in my business because I can't count, I regrettably decided to sell that camera. And I felt really bad after doing so. I had sleepless nights because I thought that's not a good look, and I don't want to put myself in that position ever again. So about this time last year, when Hasselblad reached out and asked if I wanted to do a similar thing but with the X2D Mark II, I said no. I mean, I didn't say it like that. I said it in a much more British sort of, oh, thank you so much for thinking of me, but no, thank you, I can't do that. I can't possibly do that, but thank you so much, and I'm so sorry. But I said no for three reasons, basically. Number one, I didn't want the same thing to happen again. I didn't want to acquire a camera quite publicly and then end up selling it quite quickly afterwards, because it wasn't right for me. That's not a good look and not something I wanted to repeat. Number two, as I've said, I've sort of felt like I've been running out of things to say about new cameras, so I had doubts about that. And number three, despite getting some information about the camera ahead of time, the name threw me. I kind of thought, okay, it's a Mark II, it's going to have some upgrades, but is it actually going to be any more suited to my needs, realistically, given what's at stake, given that if I get it and talk about it publicly and dedicate a video to it, it needs to be right for me. So, as I say, long story short, I said thanks, but no thanks. So, why have I decided to ultimately put my neck and my reputation on the line again by being gifted this camera? Well, in short, this X2D Mark II is everything that I wanted the X2D to be. And for good reason. These cameras typically get compared to the Fujifilm GFX line, which makes sense, 100 megapixels, medium format sensor. But outside of that, they are nothing alike in terms of build quality, in terms of ethos, in terms of shutter type, in terms of colour. They couldn't be more different. And as much as I really like the Fuji GFX, I prefer this. So what are the improvements over the original? Well, on the Mark II, the autofocus is fantastic. It's got a mixture of LiDAR and phase detect, and it works brilliantly. And where the original, for my style of shooting, was sometimes unusable, I'd say the autofocus on this one is really, really good. And not just really, really good for a medium format camera, it's really, really good full stop. The Mark II now has a joystick, where the Mark I didn't. And sadly, it's only a 4-way joystick, or a 5-way. You can press it in as well to recenter. But I would prefer it to be an 8-way joystick. But I think often with features like this, the responsiveness is just as important as the feature itself. And it is quite a responsive joystick, I would say. In fact, all of the buttons and dials are super responsive. This doesn't feel like a slow, big, medium format camera anymore. Now, stabilization is a bit of a weird one for me. I use stabilization and rely on stabilization all the time. I haven't used a tripod to take a photo in many years at this point. I hate tripods, and luckily for my work, particularly nowadays, they're completely unnecessary, and I do have IBIS to thank for that. What I'm not a fan of is the certification of IBIS, and I've never had a camera or tested a camera that has lived up to the marketing materials of that camera when it comes to IBIS. If I'm using a camera that's rated at 7 stops, I would say I can probably get 3 or 4 stops out of it, and in this case, this camera is rated at 10 stops. That seems ludicrous to me. Now, I will say it's the best camera I've ever used in terms of stabilization, to the tune of probably a full stop, which is remarkable given the size of the sensor. Now, there are some quirks to the stabilization. You need to hook the camera up to your phone so that it can get GPS coordinates and take into account the rotation of the Earth. You can only get this benefit with certain lenses, and like all IBIS systems, they perform better in the center rather than at the edges. But even accounting for all that, 10 stops, no. And for reference, let's take this 35-100 lens, and let's suggest that I'm going to shoot it at 45mm, which is 35mm in full frame equivalents. And let's say that I think I can get a sharp shot with no stabilization at a 60th of a second. And when I say a 60th of a second, I mean sharp all the time. There's no risk of it not being sharp. It's not that I'm 8 out of 10 times going to get a sharp shot, or 9 out of 10 times. Sharpness absolutely guaranteed. In that case, 5 stops of stabilization would give me a guaranteed sharp shot at half a second. 6 stops would be a second. 7 stops would be 2 seconds. Now, I think I can get the thick end of 7 stops of stabilization out of this camera. By which I mean I can pretty comfortably get pin-sharp photos at 2 seconds when I'm shooting at 35mm full frame equivalent. Which I think, again, given the size of the sensor particularly, is remarkable. But it's not 10 stops. 10 stops would be a 16-second exposure. And that's not happening. Now, let's say that 10 stops represented a 2-second exposure. That would mean that the slowest possible shutter speed I could use to guarantee myself a sharp photo without stabilization would be a 500th of a second. And if you need to shoot at 500th of a second at 35mm full frame equivalent to get a sharp shot without stabilization, there's no way with this camera you're getting a sharp shot at 2 seconds, even with stabilization. So no, I don't buy the 10-stop stabilization. And so it's a frustrating claim. And I don't really lay this at Hasselblad's door. It's an industry-wide problem that, as I say, I see with all cameras. And it's much the same in the car industry, it seems, with mileage figures or electric range. There is a detachment between what the tests say and what actually happens in the real world, I think. Nevertheless, that should not detract from the fact that this camera has got the best stabilization by far, probably a stop, I've ever used, in spite of the fact that it's got a much bigger sensor than most of the stuff I ever used. Phenomenal technology. Although I do wish you didn't have to hook up to your phone to get the GPS coordinates. I wish they'd stuck a GPS chip in the camera. That would have been better, I think. Or just have a map on the camera to point to roughly where you are. Surely it doesn't have to be that accurate. But, I mean, a GPS chip is probably the way forward. What else was I going to talk about? I really love the simplified menus in these cameras. I really do. But there are a couple of things I would like to see added. Or one thing really particularly that I'd like to see added. In most cameras, digital cameras, you can play around with the colours to mimic, even if you're shooting RAW, something more akin to what your final edit might look like while you're shooting. And arguably, Fuji's do this best. Everybody knows that you can set up recipes and whatever else. You can really fine-tune what the files look like in camera, even if you're shooting RAW. Hasselblad is basically the opposite. You can't do anything outside of adjusting white balance. And I think that's a shame. I know lots of photographers who shoot black and white, for instance, in camera, even if they're shooting colour RAWs, because they just prefer when they're out in the field to be working with black and white and to focus on contrast and things. And as much as they believe in their colour science, I, for one, would like to see, not even that much stuff. A saturation slider, a contrast slider, maybe a tone curve. That would be great. And then really, outside of that, there's only one thing that's missing from this camera, I think, which is full-blown weather sealing. Because with the improved autofocus of this camera and the incredible stabilization, Hasselblad have built a camera that can now be used in pretty much any scenario. Street photography, the kind of photography that I do. As I say, you might struggle with sports or wildlife, but I'd have a go with it. But when you take a look at the marketing materials, I think Hasselblad are a bit coy about how much weather sealing exists in this. With the lens, it literally says on their website to avoid dust and water. And given what this camera is now capable of shooting, I think that's a big shame. On the lens, actually, this is the 35-100, quite a new lens. And optically, I think it's fantastic. I think it's remarkable. I personally would have preferred to have seen a constant f4 rather than a 2.8 to an f4, just to make it smaller and lighter. It makes the camera quite front heavy in the same way that the Sony 28-70 f2 makes a camera front heavy, and so much so that if you've got it around your body, it sort of leans like that, and there's a protruding edge that just sort of goes into your body, which is not a problem for 5 or 10 minutes, but if it's all day, it gets a bit uncomfortable. Oh yeah, Hasselblad's a bit uncomfortable, poor James. I know. But outside of that, I love it, and I think it feels plush and premium, and it works in a way that I'd wished the original did. And at some point I want to pair this with the 38, which is a full frame equivalent of a 30mm lens, but with 100 megapixels, I think that would be such a versatile lightweight setup. So maybe one day. A couple of things I've not commented on. This is not a comprehensive review or a review of any sort. I've been given the camera. That wouldn't be massively unbiased, would it? But I've not talked about the Focus app. I'm trying not to use my phone all that much these days. I'm trying to simplify my life a bit. So I've not really used that at all. And I don't shoot JPEG, so I've not tried out the HDR stuff at all either. But I don't feel like I need to. I shoot RAWs with this. I really love doing so. And I particularly love shooting 65s by 24s, as you can probably tell from the photos that I've shown in this video. But it's an amazing bit of kit, and I really like it. And I feel very grateful to have it. And I'm not selling this one. I'm going to pay attention to my business numbers properly this time, so that I don't have to. Anyway, this video is dragging on. Thank you so much for watching this video and all the other videos I've ever made, if you have watched those. And yeah, no more new camera videos. I feel quite excited about the challenge and actually having to think about what to talk about more, as I used to. I've gotten lazy, but no more.